This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Bruchim Haba, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Welcome all the Torah Anytime viewers. And we begin at the beginning of the Parsha. Rivka Imenu waited many years to have a child, to have children. She was very young when she got married. She was only 3 years old. And they're waiting 20 years. They waited 10 years until she was 13. She's capable of having children. And then they waited 10 years, and they saw she was an Akara, and they prayed. And Hashem answered their tefillah. And Rivka was expecting Baruch Hashem. And there's something going on inside of her. There's a big struggle, you know. She didn't understand what was happening every time she passed by the Beis Medrash, right? Yaakov was kicking to come out every time they passed by the Beis Avodah Zarah, the house of idols. Esau was coming out. Vayisroitzutzu habanim b'kirba. They were struggling. So what were they struggling about? What were they fighting about? Rashi says they were fighting over this world, the next world, you know, big struggles, very important struggles. The Torah says no, it wasn't such a holy struggle. Very simple. Yaakov was smooth. Esau was a hairy guy. Yaakov was itchy. He was itchy. That was the fight. You know, he was itchy. Okay. Yaakov was itchy. Esau had the hair. You know, when you get a haircut, when the hair's on your head, it's not itchy. When it's somebody else's, you know, once it's off. Okay. Anyway, the Torah tells us something very interesting. The Torah tells us, Parak Chav Hey, Pasuk Chav Ches, Vayehav Yitzchak es Esav. Yitzchak loved Esav. Yitzchak loved Esav. Rivka Heves es Yaakov. Rivka loved Yaakov. Very strange. Why did Yitzchak love Esav? But he fooled him. He pulled the wall over his eyes. You know, Esav came in. You know, he made himself like a big tzaddik. He said, the Medrash says he used to ask his father Shilas, how do you take meiser off of salt? All these, you know, chumras. Esav. I mean, come on. He tricked his father. Yitzchak had ruach hakodesh. Yitzchak didn't know Esav was a rasha. He was one of the greatest people who ever lived. Do you think Esav tricked him? Says the Medrash, look at number 1. V'chilohaya avinu Yitzchak yodea b'maaseh Esav. Yitzchak didn't know about Esav's actions, shehem k'urim, that they were disgusting. V'hakasav omer, the Torah tells us, halo misanecha Hashem esna. You're supposed to hate those who hate Hashem. Umibnei ma'ahavo. Why did Yitzchak love Esav? Says the Medrash, he didn't love him because he was a tzaddik. He loved him because he was a rasha. He wanted to be makar of him. Could you be makar of someone? Oh, get out of here! You know you're a rasha. Leave out. There's the door. Out. Can't be makar of someone that way. You have to show love to them. Says the Medrash, Ela shahaya oyavai b'fanav bilvat. It was a front. He made it as if he loved him. Kedei lekarva yomashachai, to bring him close. Shaharei kavachomer. Yitzchak said, this is the only way to go. It's logical. Im kishu oavo masa mekukam. If he is so terrible when I love him, imagine how bad he'll be if I hate him. You know, he'll run away. He'll kill more Jews. So this way, what? Psychology. Yeah, I have to show him love. Maybe this will bring him closer to the Torah. There's no other way.
Well, what's his son? You have to love it whenever he, like his son was. Not every family you got everyone perfect, all that is perfect. Sometimes there's someone go and the other way.
Yeah, but if the Torah makes it the point to say that Yitzchak loved Esav, it's not just saying he loved him because it's his son. It sounds like he showed special love to him. Why? Only to be makar of him. Really, perhaps he hated him. And we'll see. He hated him. But he showed him love. He showed him love to be makar of him. Says the Gemara, Amru Rabosenu, our sages teach us, La'olam tehei yamin mikareves usmal doicha. You should always take the right hand to draw close and the left hand to push away, right? Yamin mikareves usmal doicha. When you're dealing with people who are not doing what's proper, so then you have to take a dual approach. You bring close with the right hand, you push away with the left hand. By the way, if you take someone, you schlep them to you with your right hand and you push them away with your left hand, what happens to the person? Turn around. That's how the person turns around. Right? That's how they turn. But they do a 360. You take the guy with your right hand, you bring him close left hand, you spin him around. But that's the approach that Yitzchak used. It wasn't that he loved Esau, that Esau tricked him, that Esau duped him. What was it? Yeah, Yitzchak was trying to be Makarev him. The Chida wrote a commentary on the Haftarahs. Chida was one of the greatest all-time Sephardic Gedolim, one of the greatest Gedolim of all time. And he says, in the name of Reb Chaim Vital, Reb Chaim Vital is the Talmud of the Arizal, that why did Yitzchak give Esau the brachos? Why did Yitzchak want to give Esau the brachos? So we thought, because, Esau tricked his father, Esau made his father think he's the righteous one, and Yitzchak was fooled. No! Yitzchak knew who Esau was. Yitzchak felt, I'll give him the brachos, he'll see how much I love him. And he'll do tshuva. Makarev him. How you makarev people? By throwing rocks at them? That's not going to work. The only way to be makarev them is to show them extra ahava. So therefore, says Reb Chaim Vital, Yitzchak didn't give Esau the bracha because Esau deserved the bracha. He gave him the bracha because he needed the bracha. And we're going to explain what that means exactly. That how, by giving the bracha to Esau, was Yitzchak being makarev Esau? How would that bring Esau closer?
This is the bracha that really Yitzchak gave to Yaakov?
Yeah. How would that have brought Esau closer?
It's a serious bracha. I mean, that's like everything that the Bnei Israel has.
How would that have brought Esau closer? In what way? Okay. So we're going to bring out 2 points that are not really necessarily connected to our discussion, but we'll come back to them. Number one, Toldos tells us something very interesting. When Esau was born, what does it say? Vayetze harishon admoni. What does admoni mean? It's red. So the Toldos brings down, Esau was born, Yitzchak takes a look at him, he's a red complexion, he's red, he's bloody. So Yitzchak says we can't do bris milah, because when somebody is red in his skin, when a baby is red in his skin, sometimes what that means is the blood has not yet been absorbed in the bloodstream, the blood is still in the tissue, and still in the muscle. And if you cut the muscle, it will cause terrible bleeding. So Yitzchak says, we can't do milah now. The blood hasn't been absorbed in the bloodstream yet. So Yitzchak's waiting and waiting. He's 1 year old, he's 2 years old, he looks exactly the same. Yitzchak realizes, this is just the way he looks. This is not, it's not that the blood hasn't been absorbed yet. So Yitzchak says, should I give him a milah now? Yitzchak says, in the history of Klal Yisrael, no one ever had a bris milah at 2 years old, either at 8 days old, or Yishmael had at 13. So I'll wait till he's 13. So he turns 13 years old, they're sending out the bar mitzvah invitations, and Yitzchak comes over to Esau. Esau, by the way, after you say your pshetel, after you give your dvar Torah at the bar mitzvah, I just want you to know, we're going to be doing a little procedure, we're going to be doing bris milah. Esau said, don't come near me with that knife, I don't want it. So what's Yitzchak going to do? He can't force him. Esau refused, and Esau never had a bris milah. Okay, we'll come back to that. This brings us to a very interesting topic, and that is, in anyone who deals with Talmidim in a yeshiva, or in a shul, or anywhere, you're always confronted with a very big challenge. And that is, sometimes there are people, they're not on board. They're not with the program. They're disturbing. Sometimes they don't act appropriately. What do you do with them? Do you draw them close, or do you push them away? So we have to see. Apparently, what did Yitzchak hold? Yitzchak said, we got to draw him close. Says Reb Chaim Vital, what did Rivka hold? Rivka said, this kid, there's no kira for this kid. There's no kira for this kid. Who was correct? Says Reb Chaim Vital. Apparently, in this case, Rivka was correct, because Hashem went along with Rivka's plan. So what we want to try to understand is, when should a person say, I bring you close with my right hand, I push you away with my left hand? In other words, I want to draw you close to Hashem. Or is there ever a time that you push someone away b'shtei yadayim? So let's see. There was a woman by the name of Timnah. Timnah was a daughter of kings, and she wanted to convert. The Gemara tells us in Sanhedrin, on Daf Tzadik Tes, Amud Beis. So she comes to Abraham, convert me. Abraham says, no. She comes to Yitzchak, convert me. Yitzchak says, no. She comes to Yaakov, convert me. Yaakov says, no. she says to herself, I would rather be a shivcha, a maidservant, a slave to this great people, to someone related to them, than to be a queen. She was the daughter of a king. And therefore she went ahead and she became the shivcha, she became the pilegesh, the concubine of Eliphaz. Eliphaz was Esau's son. Who was born from that union of Eliphaz and Timnah? Amalek. Says the Gemara, why did Amalek come from there? Because Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov should have been Makarev, this woman. She comes to convert. She comes closer to Hashem. They shouldn't have pushed her away. They shouldn't have said, you're not allowed to convert. They should have drawn her close.
What was the reason not to convert?
Why didn't they convert her? Now, apparently, they must have had a very good reason not to convert her. What was it? We don't know. Obviously, she had bad character, because she produced a kid like Amalek, who is the source of all evil of the Jewish people. More, right? How many of our people have been murdered by the nation of Amalek? Whoever they are, the Germans. So obviously this woman, Timnah, was not a big tzaddikas. She had bad character. She had flaws. And this wasn't only Abraham's opinion of her. Yitzchak agreed, Yaakov agreed. They all agreed she was rotten. Nevertheless, the Gemara says, why did Amalek come out? Because they rejected her. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the worst thing you could do to a human being is reject them. When you reject someone, you put in them venom. You put in them poison. It's like arson. The worst poison in the world. And from that poison will come out the worst products. Who came out? Amalek.
But this is the way when someone comes to Lachzor B'Tshuvah, the first time you say no, the second time you say no. I think only if he's coming, after a few times when he's coming back and he's really serious, you accept it.
So apparently, we dochin, we say, nah, what do you need it for? It's very, but nevertheless, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov did not accept her. They didn't accept her as a convert. In other words, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov made many gerim. Right? As Nefesh HaSha'as B'Chan, Rambam says tens of thousands. This woman, they rejected. They didn't accept her. They said, goodbye.
Yitzchak didn't see in the Ruach HaKodesh what he's going to do with the Esau. He could kill him. He didn't like him. They were afraid of father.
Who, Yitzchak with Esau?
Yeah. No, already.
Rivka knew, but Yitzchak didn't know. No, the Ramban says that she was afraid to tell Yitzchak that she went behind his back to a different Navi. Why don't you come to me? Right? So she never told him. Yitzchak never knew about Esau. Yeah, I don't know if he knew what, the evil, the rat. So anyway, Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says that what do we see from here? We see from here the devastating effects of rejecting someone. Someone wants to come closer to Hashem, you reject them, what does that produce? Amalek. We have another incident. The Gemara tells us in Sota, the same thing. You always have to draw close with your right hand, push away with your left hand. Why? There was a man by the name of Oisai Ha'ish. Who's Oisai Ha'ish? Yeshu. Yashka. By the way, this has been removed from our Gemaras. The censors took this out. But we're going to learn Reb Chaim Shmulevitz quotes the Gemara. There was a man by the name of Yeshu. Okay? And the Gemara says, from the following story we learn out, you draw close with your right hand, you push away with your left hand. But you don't push away with two hands. Why? Because Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia, who is the Rebbe of Yashka, went together with Yashka to someone's house. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia commented, oh, look what wonderful host they have. So Yeshu said, yeah, and Yeshu made a comment on the woman's eyes regarding her beauty. So the Rebbe said, I wasn't commenting on her looks to solicit a comment from you about her eyes. Why are you staring at this woman? Why are you telling me about the way this woman looks? Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia said, get out of here. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachia took 400 shofarim and he put him in cherem. Chutzpah. I was commenting on how nice the people were. What Yeshu thought, look how disgusting and low this person was. He thought his Rebbe was commenting on how attractive the woman was, so Yeshu said, yeah, but look at her eyes. Rabbi Shimon Brachas, I'm not talking about how the woman looks. I'm talking about how nice they are. How dare you even accuse me of commenting on her looks, and what are you staring at this woman for? He put him in cherem, says the Gemara, because he rejected him. That's why he became who he became. In other words, says the Gemara, had Rabbi Yehuda ben Prachia dealt with him in a more accepting way, if he would have tried to draw him close. What?
Go back and try to forgiveness.
Yeah, well.
And there was some mistake, like confused between them. In the same day, he wanted to forgive him.
Well, he said Chazar b'cha, and then he said, well, I have a tradition from you that anyone who makes other people sin can't do tshuva. But it was based on the fact that they went to somebody's house, and Yeshu thought his Rebbe was commenting on the women. And the Rebbe said, why are you looking at the ladies? I'm not talking about them. That's what the Gemara says. Says the Gemara, had the Rebbe tried to draw him close, he didn't try to draw him close. This guy is a mushchas. He's disgusting. His mind is so contaminated that not only is all he's interested in looking at the women, he thinks that's what his Rebbe's doing. And yet the Gemara says, had Rabbi Yehuda ben Prachia been more accepting and tried to draw him close more, this Russia would never have occurred, right? And we could say, more people have been murdered in the name of this individual than for any other cause in the history of humanity. Right? It's clear, it's obvious. And all of this would have been avoided had Rabbi Yehuda ben Prachia tried to have been makarev this individual. Says the Gemara, what do we see from here? Don't reject anyone, right? Don't reject anyone. It's like Reb Ruderman used to say, before you throw a kid out of yeshiva, you have to realize it's not just a monetary issue. It's an issue of life and death. It's dinei nefashos. So what do we...
Is considered Amalek also?
What?
Yoshka is considered Amalek?
No, but he's not good. He's not. Okay? So what we see from here is that when you reject someone, you inject poison into them. That poison sprouts into the worst type of growth. On the other hand, says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, there are times that you have to reject. Hashem tells Abraham, Garesh es ben ha'ama hazois. Abraham had to throw out Yishmael. What did Abraham do? He threw out Yishmael. And yet, very interestingly, when Abraham threw out Yishmael, what did he give him to eat? It says, Vayikach lechem b'chem asmayim. He gave him bread, he gave him a jug of water. It says, ask Rashi, give him some pocket change. Maybe, he'll want to buy a slice of pizza on the way. Maybe he'll want to play some scratch off. You need some cash. Says Rashi, you know why Abraham didn't give him money? Because Abraham hated him. He hated Yishmael. Why did he hate Yishmael? Because Yishmael went off Latar Basra. He went off the derech. So Abraham hated him. Ask Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, what do you mean he hated him? Don't you know what it says right after that? By the Akedah, Hashem tells Abraham, Kachna es bincha, take your son. Abraham said, which one? I have two sons. Yechidcha, you're only one. Abraham said, they're both only. Asher ahavta, the one you love. Abraham said, I love both of them. So on the one hand, Abraham gives Yishmael nothing when he throws him out. Why? Rashi says he hated him. And on the other hand, when Hashem tells Abraham, shecht your son, it's the one you love, Abraham said, I love Yishmael and Yitzchak equally. So, did Abraham love Yishmael? Or did Abraham hate Yishmael? Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, he loved Yishmael and he hated Yishmael. How could you do both? Most people, you can't love and hate them at the same time. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, midos are not feelings. Midos are measurements. You love the person, you hate their actions. It's not a contradiction. And especially when you're rejecting someone, that is the time you have to show them the most love, and you have to love them. Why? Because if you reject them out of personal hatred, then you're not doing justice to them. That's not justice, that's just animosity. When you're rejecting them, you have to show the love so that they realize this is justice. And Reb Chaim Shmulevitz says, where do we learn this out from? From Hashem himself. Why? Because when the Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed and the Goyim came into the Beis HaMikdash, they came into the Kodesh HaKadoshim and they saw the Keruvim embracing each other. So the question is, Marsha asks the question, what do you mean? The Gemara tells us that the Keruvim only embraced each other when the Jewish people did God's will. But when the Jewish people did not do the will of God, the Keruvim turned away from each other. So how is it then, at the time when the Beis HaMikdash was being destroyed, obviously we were not doing the will of God. So why were the Kruvim embracing each other? They shouldn't have been embracing each other. The answer is, God is punishing us. And God is showing us that while I'm punishing you, I show my love to you so that you realize this is not just animosity and hatred. This is justice. But at the same time, I love you. So what we're seeing is, there are times that you can't reject someone, no matter how bad they are. Even Yashka, we should have been Makar of him. Timnah, we should have been Makar of her. Yishmael, he was commanded to reject. Esav, we have a machlokes between Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak says, this is an opportunity for Kiruv. Rivka says, out of the house. Who did Hashem agree with? Rivka. By the way, the Chafetz Chaim used to say that one of the powerful members of the Communist Party was a Jew named Trotsky. And Trotsky, as a kid, was thrown out of the cheder. And he started the Yabuskim and one of the socialist parties. And the Chafetz Chaim used to say, if only Trotsky's third grade Rebbe, second grade Rebbe, first grade would have been Makar of him, imagine all the trouble that would have been avoided. So it's a very difficult thing. How do you know when to bring someone close? How do you know when to reject someone? And we have a very interesting statement from the Sefer HaChasidim. The Sefer HaChasidim was one of the Rishonim. And he says like this. He says, V'yim l'chacham talmidim in number 7. If someone has students, V'echad osek lekanter es harav es hatalmidim. And there is a student who is challenging the Rebbe, challenging other Talmidim. Mutav legarish es ha'echad letakanas ha'acher matovim. It is better to chase this one away for the benefit of everyone else. Shenemar, there's a pasuk in Mishlei, garesh leitz v'yatsa mata. Chase out the scoffer and end the fight. He continues. If you turn over, next. V'im yesh loyla adam banim. Someone has children. V'yechad ba'al machloikes. And one of them is a troublemaker. Mutav sheyidcha es harasha b'shtei yadayim. Push away the wicked with both hands. But you'll ask me, but doesn't the Gemara say you draw close with the right hand, you push away with the left hand? V'yal yomar, don't say, v'halo amru chachamim. The chachamim say, teheidocha b'smal u'makarev b'yamin. You should push away with the left hand and bring close with the right hand. Says the Sefer Chasidim, that's very nice until it affects anybody else. But if it affects other people, if others are being affected, yosar yavai lara, you'll be worse off in lo yadichu if you don't push them away. Where do we learn this from? David HaMelech tried to be Makari of Avshalom, and look how many people were murdered. So the Sefer Chasidim says it's not an absolute rule always to bring close with the right hand and push away with the left hand. Sometimes you take the right hand, you take the left hand, and you shove out the door. So how do we know what to do?
We're human beings. We're prone to make mistakes.
How do we know what to do? Very difficult question. A very difficult question. Perhaps we'll get a clue in one word the Sefer Chasidim uses. And that is, he says, V'im l'chacham talmidim v'echad oisek lekanter. What does lekanter mean? Lekanter means he's challenging. What does that mean? That means like this. You have a guy like Yashka. He's a terrible guy. All that's on his mind is taiva, noshim, histaklos. He has a big Yetzer Hara. His Yetzer Hara has grabbed a hold of him. He's a rotten guy. Bring him close. Bring him close. He has a big Yetzer Hara. So that other guy has a small Yetzer Hara. He needs extra kirov. Timnah came. She wanted to be Megayer. She wanted to come close to Hashem. She came. But she's bad. Yeah, but she's coming close. She's sincerely coming close. But she's a bad person. Doesn't matter. But what the Sefer Chasidim was talking about is lekanter. What this person is doing is against the establishment. It's against the Rebbe. It's against the other students. So it's not just that he's overcome by the Yetzer Hara. He's challenging, lekanter, right? You know, right? Is that a... His motivation is contentious. In other words, if the motivation is desire and tava, and he wants his own kavod, that's not good, but you have to try to bring that person close. But if the motivation is challenging, that's different. That's one basic difference between these cases. Yashka, he's the worst guy in the world. But he wasn't challenging the Rebbe. He wasn't saying that the Rebbe is not giving over a correct Torah. He's just a big Baal Taiva. He's a Rasha. You have no right to chase that person out. But if the person is Lakanter, he's chepping, that's different. That's different. Okay, but...
So Esav was this.
Esav? You have a big machlekes. What was Esav? What was Esav? Perhaps Rivka realized that Esav was undermining Yaakov's ability to grow, or challenging his ability to grow. Vayivaz Esav es ha-bechora. What does that mean, Vayivaz Esav es ha-bechora? He despised Kedusha. He outwardly, wasn't just he was interested in, like the Gemara says, he did 5 Averos, but he was being mevazeh things that were holy. It wasn't just that he was into Avera. He was outwardly instigating against Kedusha, Vayivaz. That's different. All right, obviously, it's a very complicated topic, a very sensitive topic, but we just see different Mamari Chazal about this. And of course, you need to daven, you need Siyata Dishma. We're going to, yeah.
So in all these cases, did emotions have any play in it?
No. No.
So David HaMelech had no emotion and...
Oh, you mean in the mistake that David HaMelech... Perhaps. We don't know. We don't have a right to criticize, David HaMelech. But the Gemara does say that he was acted improperly in bringing Avshalom close. Can you imagine? Even David was wrong in bringing his own son close. So, it's very hard to know what to do. Okay, let us move on to a different part of the Parsha, and we're going to tie it back to what we started with. Okay. Okay. So, Yaakov puts on the clothing of Esav, and he masquerades as Esav. He comes in, he says, Ani Esav, Anochi Esav b'charecha. I'm Esav. So, Yitzchak feels him, right? Hakol kol Yaakov, v'yadayim, yeah. So he says, Yitzchak gives him the bracha. Says the pasuk, look at number 8. Vayigash, he approaches him. Vayishak lo, he gives him a kiss. Vayarach es reach begadav, he smells his clothing. Vayivarcheyu, he blesses him. Vayomer, and he says, Re'eh reach b'ni kereach sada asher bercha Hashem. You smell good. I like the soap you use. No. You smell good. Your clothing smell like a field that Hashem blessed. Rashi says, what? He smelled good? He was wearing the clothing of a goat. Nothing smells worse than goat skin. It stinks. Rashi says, there's nothing worse than the skin of goats. The scent of Gan Eden went in with him. Maybe they should market that scent, Scent of Gan Eden. Fine. The Gemara gives a completely different explanation for what Yitzchak smelled. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says, Reb Zera Amar, number 10, Mehacha, Vayarach asreach begadav, al tikri begadav, ela boigdav. You know what Yitzchak smelled? He smelled the traitors of the Jewish people. He looked into the future, he saw all these Rishon that came out of the Jewish people, and they weren't even so bad. A Jewish Rasha is much better than the best guy. In other words, Yitzchak saw many Rishon of the Jewish people and how they would do tshuva. And the question we have to ask is, that means Rashi and the Gemara are saying two very different things. Rashi says, what did Yitzchak smell? Gan Eden. The Gemara says, what did Yitzchak smell? The wicked Jews who would do tshuva. Like, how do those two things fit in with each other? You couldn't have possibly thought of two explanations that are more diametrically opposed, that are different. So how do we understand these two smells? Another question. What happens? Esav comes in, he says, Daddy, I'm home. I'm ready for the bracha. Yitzchak trembles. He trembles. Whoa! Then who just came in? And they realized it was Yaakov. Yaakov stole the brachas. Yitzchak, Esav's crying. Didn't you leave something for me? Can't you give me something? You'll eat some of my food and you'll give me some bracha? Yitzchak said, no, I have nothing for you. Nothing. Esav said, just eat some of my food. Yitzchak said, V'oichal mikol, I ate everything. Can't eat anymore. Can't eat anymore? Why not? He had Yitzchak had mamish achila gasa. He had such a big meal, he couldn't eat anything. Esav brought him some meat, so have a rib. Have, a piece of stuff, a little piece of, a little hot dog, something. Have something. You can't eat. He ate everything? There's always room for, there's always room for dessert. Then another very interesting thing. What does Yitzchak tell Esav? He says the word sana. Sana, take your sword. Rashi says, what does it mean, sana? Sana, Rashi says, it means to sharpen. Lahashchiz. Lahashchiz. Like the Mishnah says in Be'ah, Ein mashchizin es hasakin. We don't sharpen the knife. Aval masiya al gabe chaverta. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to sharpen a knife. You're not allowed to, right? But you're allowed to just rub one against the other. You can't really sharpen, you can rub one against the other. So the lashon of the Mishnah is, Ein mashchizin es hasakin. You don't sharpen the knife. But what do? Masiya achas chaverta. You could rub one against the other. So then, why did Yitzchak say, sana, rub one against? Why didn't he say, be mashchiz, sharpen it normally? Why did Yitzchak tell him the way that we only do on Yom Tif, because you're not allowed to do it the regular way? Tell him to sharpen it straight out. Says the Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer. Here's a medrash. When did this story take place? When did Yitzchak give Esav, Yaakov the brachas? It was the night of Pesach. It's the night of Pesach. The medrash says the night of Pesach came. And Yitzchak calls Esav, he says, Esav, I want you to know this night everyone sings Hallel. The Malachim sing Hallel. The gates of heaven are open for bracha. By the way, we learn from here that the night of the Seder is a tremendous night that is mesugal. It is set aside for Hashem to bestow on us tremendous bracha, refuah, arichas yamim. So therefore, Esav, I want you to do the following. Go make me some food, and while the gates of blessing are open, you bring me the food, I will tap into that bracha and I will give you the bracha. So what do we learn from here? That this wasn't any ordinary day, right? It wasn't even Thanksgiving. It was the night of Pesach. And the night of Pesach is designated for tremendous bracha. By the way, the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says the same thing. If you look at number 16, Targum Yonasan says that when Yitzchak became old and his eyes were dimmed. By the way, Rashi says, why were Yitzchak's eyes dimmed? Rashi says 3 explanations. Rashi says when, by the Akedah, the Malachim were crying. Remember we learned, Parsha Vayir, the Malachim were crying, and the tears went into Yitzchak's eyes. Rashi says the smoke of the sacrifices of the wives of Esau irritated Yitzchak's eyes. Rashi says Hashem purposely made Yitzchak hard of seeing because he wanted Yaakov to be able to steal the brachos. Says the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel another explanation why Yitzchak couldn't see well. Because at the Akedah, when God opened up the heaven, Yitzchak looked up at the Kisei HaKavod. And since Lo Yerani Ha'adam B'chai, since nobody could see God, it damaged his eyesight. That's what Targum Yonasan ben Uziel says. I never saw this before. To me, this was a brand new explanation. Anyway, says the Targum Yonasan ben Uziel, it was... Ma?
That means he never see his wife.
I don't know if he was completely blind. He was Vatechena. It was dimmed. It was dim. Okay. And he said to his son, my son, this is the night of Pesach. The gates of bracha are open. Let's tap into that. Rashi tells us, what does Yitzchak tell Esav? Bring me shnei gedayizim, 2 goats. Why? Rashi says, what? Yitzchak could eat 2 goats? Who could eat 2 goats? You can't even eat 1 goat. Right? Who could eat? Yitzchak really? You can't eat more than. Who could eat more than 2 pieces of steak? What he ate like 10 lamb chops and 2 goats. Who could eat 2 goats? Says Rashi, it was Pesach. You bring 2 karbanos on Pesach. One is the karban Pesach. One is the karban Chagiga. First, you bring the Chagiga because you can't eat the Pesach unless you're satisfied. So you eat the Pesach. You eat from the. You don't have to eat the whole thing. You eat from the Pesach. Then first you eat the Chagiga. Then you eat the karban Pesach. There's an incredible medrash, one more medrash, in Parshas Bo. Parshas Bo, the medrash tells us that Hashem came to Mitzrayim and he wanted to take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. He said, my children, it's time to leave. The only thing was, we had no mitzvos. So Hashem said like this, I'm gonna get you to do a mitzvah. I'm going to get you to do bris milah. And the Jewish people in Mitzrayim, they didn't do bris milah except for Shevet Levi. Any Leviim here? Kohanim? No. Only Shevet Levi did bris milah, like the pasuk says, Levi Amar, Tumecha v'yirecha l'irish chasidecha, v'yes brischa yinsayru. They kept the bris. Okay? So Hashem says, I want to get the Jewish people to do bris milah. So Hashem says, bring the Karban Pesach the night of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So Bnei Yisrael got very excited. They were going to bring the Karban Pesach. They smelled the meat, right? Nothing smells better to a man than roasting meat. It smells good, right? Jewish people said, we want to eat it. Hashem said, not so fast. V'ara lo yochabo. Anyone who's uncircumcised can't eat it. So Bnei Yisrael said, we're not that hungry, right? We're not that hungry. So Hashem said, what am I going to do? I really want to get them to do the bris milah. Hashem opened up Gan Eden. He opened up the window. He took all the four winds, and the four winds blew the scent of Gan Eden into the Karban Pesach. The Bnei Yisrael smelled it again. Now this is meat. And they said, we're going through with the bris milah. They did the bris milah. They ate the Karban Pesach. Hashem says, now you're ready to get a blessing. Hashem picked up every Jew. He kissed them, and he blessed them. So Yitzchak is thinking like this. Yitzchak is thinking, I'm going to have the Karban Pesach be brought, and if it's brought properly, with the right intentions and the right kavanos, and it's brought the same way the Jews will bring it when they leave Mitzrayim, it will be accompanied by the scent of Gan Eden. And Yitzchak also smelled something else. He smelled all those Jews who didn't want to do bris milah, all those traitors, all the bogdim, who were eventually brought closer through the scent of Gan Eden. So these two explanations, says the Be'er Yosef. The Be'er Yosef says in number 20 that these two explanations for what Yitzchak was smelling are not contradictory. He smelled the scent of Gan Eden, and he also smelled the scent of the bogdim, the traitors. In other words, this Karban Pesach was a reliving or a pre-enactment of the way the Karban Pesach will be when Bnei Yisrael will bring it when they left Mitzrayim. What is that? Yitzchak smelled all those traitors, all those Jewish people who didn't want to do the bris milah, and he also smelled the scent of Gan Eden. So these two explanations are not contradictory, but they were both present when Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim. So I'd like to suggest that what did Reb Chaim Vital tell us? Reb Chaim Vital said that by Yitzchak giving the brachos to Esav, he was going to be Makarev Esav. How? The same way Hashem was Makarev Bnei Yisrael when we left Mitzrayim. How? He said, I want them to do bris milah. So what am I going to do? I'm going to tell them to bring the Karban Pesach. That will bring out the scent of Gan Eden. And then in order to eat the Karban Pesach, they'll have to do bris milah. So perhaps, like we said before, Esav never had a bris milah. So what does Yitzchak say? How am I going to get him to do the bris milah? I command him on Pesach to bring the Karban Pesach. If he does it right, the scent of Gan Eden will come out, and Esav's going to want to eat it. But an ara lo yochabo, an uncircumcised person will not be able to eat it. And in that way, Yitzchak was hoping to get Esav to do tshuva. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. What does Yitzchak tell Esav? Yitzchak tells Esav, I'm sorry, ba achicha b'mirma, your brother has come with deceit to steal the bracha. Look at Targum Unklos. What does Targum Unklos say the word mirma means? B'chachmasa, with wisdom. That's not. Mirma doesn't mean chachma. Deceit doesn't mean wisdom. Deceit is trickery. Chachma is wisdom. Why is the Targum Unklos translating the word deceit as chachma? The answer is like this. Yaakov was such a smart guy. Yaakov says, I don't just want to get the bracha, I want to get all the bracha. I don't want Esav to have one iota of bracha. How am I going to be able to do that? I have to have my father eat in a way that he will not be able to eat one additional morsel. So what am I going to do? I feed him the carbon chagiga. I feed him the carbon pesach. And the halacha is, Ein maftirin achar ha-pesach afikomen. You're not allowed to eat anything after the afikomen. So this was mirma, it was deceit. But it was chachma, it was wisdom. It was wisdom. That's why Yitzchak says, you know what I can't do? You know what? What does Yitzchak say? V'oichal mikoil, I ate everything. I ate everything? What do you mean? So he filled himself up to capacity? No, halachically he filled himself to capacity. He ate everything he's halachically permitted to eat. I can't eat anymore. There's nothing left to give you. Says Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld, the gematria of the word b'mirma is the same as afikaiman. The gematria of the word b'mirma, your brother came b'mirma, with deceit. What was the deceit? He gave me the afikaiman. I can't eat anything else. That's why Rashi says, what does sana mean? It doesn't mean to sharpen. It means just one against the other. Why? It's yamtif. And yamtif, ein mashchizan esasakin. You can't sharpen. You can only do one on top of each other. So this was Yitzchak's grand scheme. Yitzchak didn't love Esau because he loved him. He loved him to bring him close. He gave him the brachos to bring him close. Rivka disagreed. Hashem agreed with Rivka. But it's a very difficult decision to make and very hard to know exactly when to take the approach of you bring close with your right hand, you draw away you push away with the left hand, when you're supposed to push away with two hands. Very hard to know. You need siyata d'shmaya, you need to daven that Hashem should guide you in the right path. But we see Yitzchak had a very wise plan here. He figured he's going to give Yitzchak Esau the bracha. How? Tell him to bring the Karban Pesach. Maybe the Tam Gan Eden will convince him to do the Milah. But ultimately it didn't work. Ultimately, the bracha belongs to us. Have a good night.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.